You are very intelligent and feeling so lonely is normal. You learned very early that being intelligent was supposed to be a gift. People admired the way you think. They noticed how quickly you understand things, how easily you read between the lines, how you can sense what other people miss before they even realize it themselves. They called you mature, deep, wise for your age. Some admired your mind, some envied it. But almost no one ever asked what it felt like to live inside that mind. No one saw the nights when your thoughts would not stop. No one saw how a single conversation could stay with you for days, how you replayed every word, every expression, every silence, trying to understand what was really there beneath the surface. No one saw how exhausting it was to notice everything. It is not the loneliness of having no one around you. It is the loneliness of feeling that no one truly reaches you. You can sit in a room full of people and still feel invisible. You can laugh, answer, listen, even make others feel understood, while inside you feel strangely far away from everyone, not because you do not care, not because you do not want connection, but because there is a part of you that has never felt fully seen. You learned to hide the deepest parts of yourself. You learned that when you spoke too honestly about what you felt, people became uncomfortable. When you asked deeper questions, they changed the subject. When you tried to explain the storm inside your mind, people gave you advice instead of understanding. So little by little, you stopped speaking. You kept the real thoughts to yourself. You learned how to smile while carrying sadness. How to say, "I'm tired," when what you really meant was, "I don't know how much longer I can carry all of this alone." Because you have spent so much of your life being the one who understands everyone else. You know how to read emotions. You know how to say the right thing. You know how to stay calm, stay strong, stay useful. But somewhere along the way you became so focused on understanding everyone else that you forgot to ask, who was understanding you? There is a reason why you often feel exhausted even when nothing is technically wrong. You're carrying more than people can see. You carry imagined futures, unanswered questions, old wounds, silent disappointments. You carry every version of yourself you could have been. You carry the pressure to get it right, to avoid mistakes, to be prepared, to make sense of everything. Maybe you could prevent rejection. Maybe you could stop people from leaving. Maybe you could finally feel safe. What if you are suffering because you have been trying to control things that were never yours to control? The future, other people, their feelings, their choices, their distance, their inability to love you in the way you needed. You have spent so much time trying to carry the unbearable weight of what is outside your hands that you have forgotten something essential. Your mind was never meant to be a prison. You are not broken because you think deeply. You are not weak because you feel intensely. What you are feeling is not random. There is a reason why your heart feels tired. There is a reason why you feel different. And there is a reason why, despite everything, some part of you is still searching. Because deep inside you know there must be another way to live. A way that does not require you to constantly fight yourself. A way that does not require you to become smaller, colder, simpler, or more like everyone else. A way where your sensitivity is no longer a burden. What if nothing is wrong with me at all? What if the pain I have been carrying is not proof that I am broken, but proof that I have been trying to survive in a way that was never meant for me? Because the truth is, your loneliness is trying to tell you something. The loneliness no one sees. You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. Not because no one is there, but because no one seems to reach the place inside you where you truly live. Most people do not realize how exhausting it is to constantly feel like you are translating yourself. Your depth was called overthinking. Your sensitivity was called weakness. Your questions were called too much. Your silence was misunderstood as distance, when in reality you were simply trying to find words for feelings that were too complex to fit into ordinary conversations. So you adapted. You learned how to become understandable. You learned how to smile when you wanted to disappear into yourself. You learned how to make jokes, give advice, be useful, be strong. You learned how to show people only the version of you that felt safe enough to be accepted. And little by little, you began hiding the rest. People know your name, your work, your role, your personality. They know the version of you that survives, but very few people know the version of you that lies awake at night, wondering why you feel so far away from everyone. Very few people know how deeply you think about things, how one small moment can stay in your mind for weeks, how one look, one sentence, one subtle shift in someone's energy can change everything inside you. You notice things other people ignore. You notice when someone's smile is not real. You notice when there is tension in the room even when everyone pretends everything is fine. And because you notice so much, you often carry far more than anyone realizes. You carry emotions that were never fully spoken. You carry fears that were never fully understood. You carry invisible disappointments, invisible hopes, invisible grief. There is a reason why you often feel tired after being around people. You are not only listening to what they say, you are listening to everything beneath what they say. And after years of doing this, you begin to feel like there is no one listening beneath your words. That is where the deepest loneliness begins. Not when you are abandoned. Not when you are physically alone. You tell yourself you do not need anyone. You become independent, self-sufficient, strong. You become the person everyone else relies on. But beneath that strength, there is still a quiet ache. A part of you that is tired of carrying everything alone. A part of you that longs for someone to look beyond your intelligence, beyond your calmness, beyond the role you play and say, I see you. I see how hard you try. I see the sadness you hide behind your strength. I see the loneliness you carry behind your silence. Most people do not realize that when you go long enough without being understood, you begin to turn against yourself. You begin to wonder if maybe you are the problem. Maybe you are too emotional, too sensitive, too intense, too complicated. But what if the reason you feel different is not because something is wrong with you? What if your loneliness is not proof that you are broken, but proof that you have spent your whole life in places where you could not fully exist? The truth is you were never too much. And when that happens long enough, you begin shrinking yourself without even realizing it. You stop saying what you really think. You stop admitting what you really feel. You stop asking the questions that matter to you. You begin living from the outside instead of from the inside. But no matter how much you hide, there is always a part of you that refuses to disappear. The part that still wants something real. The part that still wants to be known. Because what you are feeling is not random. And the reason is deeper than you think. It is not only that you feel different from the world. It is that somewhere along the way you became trapped inside your own mind. When your mind becomes a cage. Your mind was never meant to carry this much. It was meant to help you understand the world, not protect you from every possible pain inside it. But somewhere along the way, your intelligence stopped feeling like a gift and started feeling like something you had to survive. You began using your mind for more than thinking. You used it to anticipate rejection, to prepare for disappointment. You learned to scan people the way other people scan danger. And because you are intelligent, because you notice patterns, because you have been hurt before, your mind became convinced that if you stayed alert enough, nothing would ever catch you off guard again. The truth is, most people do not realize how exhausting it is to live inside a mind that never truly rests. Even when your body is still, your mind is moving. It returns to old conversations and tries to decode them. It replays moments from years ago and wonders what you should have said differently. You are not only living your life, the version where they leave, the version where you fail, the version where everything falls apart, the version where you are not enough. And because your mind is so convincing, these possibilities begin to feel real. That is why you can feel exhausted, anxious, heartbroken, or afraid, even when nothing has happened. Because inside you everything is always happening. You have been carrying imaginary pain as if it were real. You have been fighting invisible battles in your head for so long that your nervous system no longer knows the difference between a thought and a threat. It is about trying to feel safe. It is what happens when a person has spent too much of their life feeling uncertain, emotionally alone, misunderstood, or unable to trust what comes next. So you try to create certainty. You try to think your way into safety. But the truth is, the mind can only do one thing with uncertainty. it can create more of it. Every answer creates another question. Every possibility creates another fear. Every moment of relief disappears the second a new thought enters your head. That is why no amount of thinking ever feels like enough. Other people, their choices, their feelings, the future, loss, rejection, time. The truth is, your mind has been carrying responsibilities that do not belong to it. It has been trying to keep you safe from life itself. And in doing that, it has slowly become the very thing that is hurting you. There is a reason why silence feels so uncomfortable to you. Because when everything becomes quiet, there is nothing left between you and your own thoughts. You believe every thought because the voice in your head sounds like you. But what if that voice is not always telling the truth? What if some of the thoughts you trust the most are simply old fears wearing the mask of logic? What if the voice that says, "You are too much," is not your wisdom, but the echo of people who never understood you? The truth is, not every thought deserves your trust. Some thoughts are fear. Some thoughts are survival. And because you are intelligent, you know how to build arguments for those thoughts. You know how to justify them. You know how to make them sound reasonable. That is what makes this kind of suffering so difficult. Your prison does not look like a prison. It looks like responsibility. It looks like self-awareness. It looks like being prepared. But deep inside, you already know the truth. You are tired. Tired of carrying futures that have not happened. Tired of trying to hold everything together. Tired of feeling like you must always be one step ahead of pain. Because no matter how hard you try, life still remains uncertain. People still change. Things still end. The future still refuses to tell you what will happen. And maybe that is not the real tragedy. Because the deepest reason you feel so overwhelmed is not only that you think too much, it is that you notice too much. You see what other people miss. You feel what other people hide. The secret burden of seeing too much. You learned very early that you were seeing something other people were not. You noticed when a room became tense before anyone spoke. You noticed when someone said, "I'm fine." But there was pain hiding beneath the words. And because no one else seemed to react, you began to wonder if maybe you were imagining it. But you were not imagining it. You were noticing what others had trained themselves not to see. You do not simply experience what is visible. You experience what is unspoken. You feel the distance in a relationship before it is admitted. You feel the anger someone is trying to hide. Most people move through life only seeing what is on the surface. You move through life feeling what exists underneath it. And at first, this can feel like a gift. You understand people deeply. You know how to comfort them, how to protect them, how to sense what they need before they ask. You become the person who notices, the person who listens, the person who sees what no one else sees. But there's another side to this gift that almost no one talks about. You carry other people's sadness. You carry their tension. You carry their confusion, their silence, their distance. You walk into a room and immediately begin absorbing everything inside it. And because you are so used to doing this, you often do not even realize it is happening. You only know that by the end of the day, you feel heavy, drained, overwhelmed. There is a reason why certain people leave you exhausted. It is not because you are weak. It is because your mind and heart are always listening. Even when you do not want them to, you listen to tone, to pauses, to energy, to what is missing, to what almost happened, to what could happen next. You try to keep everyone comfortable. You try to avoid conflict before it starts. You try to prevent disappointment before it arrives. You become responsible for emotions that were never yours to carry. The truth is, many intelligent and sensitive people quietly become emotional guardians. They walk through life trying to protect everyone from pain while no one protects them. You became so focused on understanding everyone else that you lost contact with yourself. For so long, your attention has been turned outward. You have been scanning the world, reading people, anticipating danger, noticing changes. You have been surviving through awareness. But awareness without boundaries becomes suffering. You start to believe that every feeling is your responsibility, that every distance is your fault, that every change in someone means you must do something, fix something, understand something. But what if you are not meant to carry all of this? What if your gift was never supposed to become your burden? Most people do not realize that sensitivity is not the problem. So you became hyper-aware. You learned to read every room, every face, every shift. But there is no peace in living that way, because the more you notice, the more you feel responsible. And the more responsible you feel, the more impossible it becomes to rest. You cannot rest because you are always watching, always listening, always preparing. That is why your sensitivity no longer feels like intuition. It feels like exhaustion. It feels like carrying the whole world inside your chest. But what you are feeling is not random. You are not broken. You are not weak because you feel deeply. You were simply never taught that there is a difference between noticing something and making it your responsibility. You can sense pain without carrying it. You can see distance without blaming yourself for it. You can understand people without abandoning yourself. And until you learn that, your gift will continue to feel like a curse. You are not only trying to protect others, you are trying to protect yourself from the future. Why you keep trying to save the future? You do not worry so much because you are weak. You worry because somewhere inside you, you learned that pain is easier to survive when you see it coming. So you began living with one foot in the future, always preparing, always imagining, always asking yourself what could go wrong, what might change, what you should do before it is too late. You call it thinking ahead, being responsible, being realistic. But the truth is, most people do not realize that anxiety often disguises itself as intelligence. If you prepare enough, you can avoid disappointment. If you stay alert enough, nothing will catch you by surprise. So you keep trying to save the future before it arrives. You imagine conversations that have not happened. You prepare for endings that do not exist. You create plans for every possible version of tomorrow. And because your mind is powerful, because you can see so many possibilities, you begin to believe that it is your responsibility to hold them all. But your mind was never meant to carry that weight. There is a reason why you feel exhausted even when nothing is wrong. Because you are not only living today, you are living tomorrow, next month, next year. You are living every possible future at once. The version where you fail, the version where they leave, the version where you lose everything, the version where you are not enough. Your heart races. Your chest tightens. Your mind becomes louder. You tell yourself you are preparing, but what you are really doing is suffering in advance. The truth is, your anxiety is not coming from the future itself. It is coming from your attempt to control it. You are trying to make uncertainty disappear, but there is no thought powerful enough to give you that guarantee. Because life does not ask for certainty, it asks for trust, and that is the part that feels impossible. Because somewhere inside you there is still a frightened part that believes, if I stop worrying, something bad will happen. If I stop thinking about it, I will lose control. Most people do not realize that this is not wisdom. It is fear disguised as responsibility. Maybe you grew up in an environment where things changed suddenly, where love was unpredictable, where people disappointed you without warning, where you had to become emotionally alert because you never knew what was coming. So you learned to survive by trying to stay one step ahead of pain. You learned to read the future before it arrived. But what once protected you is now exhausting you. Because the future is endless, there is always one more thing to fear, one more possibility, one more scenario, one more reason to stay afraid. And no matter how much you prepare, it never feels like enough. It is safety. And the painful truth is that you will never find safety by controlling what has not happened yet. You will only find it when you stop asking the future to make you feel secure. The truth is, the future has never been the thing hurting you. You do not need to know everything that will happen. You do not need to solve tomorrow before it arrives. Because there is something your mind has forgotten. You have survived every difficult thing you thought would destroy you. You have survived loss, confusion, loneliness, disappointment. You have survived days you once believed you would never survive. Not because you controlled them, but because something inside you was stronger than you realized. There is a reason why you keep trying to save the future. You do not trust that you will be able to survive it. What if peace does not come from controlling what will happen? What if it comes from learning the difference between what is yours to carry and what never was? The two worlds, what you control and what you never will. There are two worlds living inside your life. One is the world you can touch. The other is the world you have spent your whole life trying to hold together. Other people, their feelings, their love, their decisions, the future, the outcome, the timing. You have been trying to carry things that were never yours to carry. You have tried to make people understand you, to make them stay, to make them choose you, to make them love you the way you needed. You have tried to control what they think of you, what they feel, what they might do next. But you cannot control another person's heart. You cannot control whether they stay, whether they leave, whether they see your value, or whether they understand your pain. And the more you try, the more powerless you feel, because you are fighting a battle that no one can win. The truth is, you were never meant to carry the weight of other people's choices. You were only meant to carry your own. This is the difference that changes everything. There is your side of life, and there is the side that does not belong to you. Your side is your honesty, your effort, your boundaries, your values, your courage, your willingness to love without abandoning yourself. Their side is whether they understand, whether they choose, whether they stay, whether they become who you hope they will become. Most people do not realize how much pain is created when you keep reaching into the second world, trying to force it to obey the first. You can spend years trying to predict the future so you never have to feel uncertainty. You can spend years trying to control every possible outcome, only to discover that life still unfolds in its own way. And when it does, you blame yourself. You think, if only I had said the right thing. If only I had been better. But what if the pain was never that you failed? The truth is, there is a strange kind of freedom that begins when you stop fighting what is not yours. Not because you stop caring, not because you become cold or distant, but because you finally understand where your power truly lives. Your power has never been in controlling what happens. Your power is in how you meet what happens. You cannot control whether someone rejects you, but you can control whether you reject yourself because of it. You cannot control whether life changes, but you can control whether you keep resisting every change until it destroys you. You cannot control whether someone loves you. There is a reason why you have been so exhausted. You have been standing in the doorway between these two worlds, trying to carry both. Trying to carry your pain and everyone else's. Trying to carry your future and every possible version of it. No wonder your heart is tired. No wonder your mind feels overwhelmed. You were never meant to live this way. The truth is, peace begins the moment you stop asking life to give you certainty and start asking yourself a different question. What is actually mine to carry? Your truth is yours to carry. Your choices are yours to carry. Your healing is yours to carry. Your dignity is yours to carry. But other people's confusion is not yours. Their inability to love is not yours. You do not have to keep making their chaos your responsibility. You do not have to keep making their inability to choose you into evidence that you are not enough. Because you are not broken. You have simply been trying to hold together a world that was never in your hands. That worrying is caring. That carrying everything is strength. But there is another truth waiting for you. A quieter truth. A truth that asks. Because maybe the reason you are afraid to let go is not only that you fear losing control. Maybe it is that you no longer know who you are, without the pain. The strange addiction to suffering. There is a part of you that says you want peace. But there is another part of you that does not know who you would be without the pain. That is the truth most people never speak about. You become the one who always overthinks, the one who is always wounded, the one who is always misunderstood, the one who carries everything. And after a while, even though it hurts, it begins to feel familiar. The truth is, Human beings do not only become attached to what feels good, they become attached to what feels known. Even if what feels known is sadness, loneliness, anxiety, emotional chaos. There is a reason why you keep returning to the same thoughts, the same memories, the same people, the same fears. Not because you want to suffer, but because suffering has become the place where you recognize yourself. You know who you are when you are carrying someone else. But when there is nothing to fix, nothing to fear, nothing to carry, something inside you becomes uncomfortable. Because peace feels unfamiliar. Stillness feels unsafe. You have lived so long in survival mode that calm begins to feel empty. Most people do not realize that suffering can become a home, a painful home. You tell yourself that you cannot let go because the pain matters. If you stop hurting, maybe it means they did not matter. If you stop carrying the wound, maybe you will lose the last connection you had to the person you used to be. So you keep returning. You revisit old conversations. You reopen old wounds. You replay the same stories inside your mind. You keep asking why they changed, why they left, why you were not enough. You are searching for yourself inside the pain, because somewhere along the way, your suffering became the place where you learned to exist. There is a reason why letting go feels so frightening. It is not only because you are afraid of losing the pain. Who are you if you are no longer the one who waits to be chosen? Who are you if you stop being the person who carries everyone else? For so long, your pain has given you a role, a purpose, a story. It has told you who you are. And even though it hurts, there is comfort in certainty, even painful certainty, because at least you know it. At least you know how to survive there. The unknown is more frightening, the idea of becoming someone new, someone who no longer needs to chase, fix, prove, or suffer in order to feel worthy. Someone who no longer turns pain into identity. You are attached to it because it once protected you. Your sadness protected you from disappointment. Your overthinking protected you from uncertainty. Your loneliness protected you from being hurt again. Your emotional walls protected the parts of you that had been wounded too many times. But what once protected you is now keeping you trapped. Because you cannot heal while clinging to the very thing that is hurting you. You cannot become who you are meant to be if you keep returning to who you had to be in order to survive. There is a reason why healing feels so strange at first. Because healing is not only the loss of pain, it is the loss of an old identity. The identity of the one who always carries everything. The identity of the one who is never chosen. You are not that person. You never were. But survival is not the same as living. And there comes a moment in every person's life when they must decide, will I keep returning to what is familiar even if it hurts? Because the truth is, your pain is not your identity. Your suffering is not your personality. Your wounds are not the deepest thing about you. There is still a self beneath the sadness, a self beneath the fear, a self beneath the years of carrying what was never yours. But to find that self, you will have to face a painful truth. You were never too sensitive. You were simply never protected. You were never too sensitive, only unprotected. You were not born believing that your feelings were a problem. You learned it. When you tried to explain what you felt and were told you were too emotional, too dramatic, too much. When you needed comfort, but received advice. When you needed understanding, but received judgment. Little by little, you began to believe that there was something wrong with the way you felt. So you stopped trusting yourself. You stopped trusting your sadness, your fear, your intuition, your needs. The truth is, you were never too sensitive. You were simply a sensitive person in a world that did not know how to protect sensitivity. They are created when pain has nowhere safe to go. You noticed everything, but there was no one to teach you how to carry it without drowning in it. So you did what so many sensitive people do. You adapted. You became who you needed to be in order to survive. You became quiet, easy, helpful, strong. You learned to hide your feelings so that other people would not be uncomfortable. You learned to laugh when you wanted to cry. You learned to say, "I'm fine," because it felt safer than telling the truth. There is a reason why you struggle to know what you need. For so long, your survival depended on paying attention to everyone else, their moods, their reactions, their expectations. You learned that love meant becoming what other people needed. So you abandoned the parts of yourself that did not seem acceptable. You think this is just who you are, the one who gives more than they receive, the one who understands everyone else. But that is not your true nature. That is what happens when a sensitive person grows up without emotional safety. You become hyper-aware, hyper-responsible, hyper-independent, because somewhere inside you, there is still a part that believes, if I do everything right, maybe I will finally be loved. The truth is, you learn to earn love by abandoning yourself. And because you learned it so young, it feels normal. It feels natural to ignore your own needs, to silence your own feelings, to tell yourself that what hurts you should not hurt you, to stay in places that make you feel unseen because you are afraid that asking for more means asking for too much. But you are not asking for too much. You have simply spent your whole life receiving too little understanding, too little safety, too little space to be exactly who you are. Because they awaken the old wound, the wound that says you must work for love, the wound that says your feelings are a burden, the wound that says you are only valuable when you are useful. Most people do not realize that the deepest loneliness is not being alone. It is being disconnected from yourself. It is living so far away from your own needs, your own feelings, your own truth, that you no longer know what you want or who you are. You know what everyone else needs. You know how everyone else feels. But when someone asks you what you need, you go silent. Because no one ever taught you that your needs matter too. No one ever taught you that sensitivity is not weakness, that tenderness is not something to be ashamed of. It is the part that has been trying to save you all along. Your sensitivity is the reason you notice beauty, the reason you love so deeply, the reason you understand pain, loneliness, and the human heart in a way that few people ever will. The problem is not your sensitivity. The problem is that you learned to turn it against yourself. You used your sensitivity to blame yourself, to overthink, to question your worth, to make yourself responsible for everything. But what if your sensitivity was never meant to be used that way? What if it was meant to guide you instead? To show you what hurts, what matters, what is true, what is not. A part of you that has spent your whole life trying to protect you. And if you want to heal, you will have to meet the part of yourself you have been avoiding for years. The shadow beneath your intelligence. The shadow beneath your intelligence. Your intelligence has protected you in ways no one will ever fully understand. It helped you survive what you could not explain. When life became unpredictable, your mind gave you structure. When people hurt you, your mind gave you distance. And for a long time, it worked. You became thoughtful, controlled, self-aware. You learned how to understand everything before it could hurt you. But there is another side to intelligence that almost no one talks about. The shadow. The part of you that hides behind your mind because it is afraid to be seen. The truth is, sometimes intelligence becomes a wall. You learn how to analyze instead of feel, how to explain instead of experience, how to understand your pain without ever truly touching it. You can describe exactly why you feel the way you feel. You can understand every layer of yourself, and yet somehow, you still feel stuck. Because understanding is not the same as healing. There is a reason why you know so much about yourself, but still feel disconnected from yourself. So instead of feeling sadness, you study it. Instead of admitting that you are hurt, you become curious about why. You call it self-awareness. But sometimes, it is only self-protection. Most people do not realize that one of the loneliest things intelligent people do is hide behind the version of themselves that seems the strongest. You become the one who has the answers, the one who stays calm, the one who understands everyone else. But beneath that version of you, there is another self. A self that is tired, a self that wants to stop pretending, a self that is carrying grief, fear, anger, longing, a self that does not want to be understood from a distance, a self that wants to be held. The shadow beneath your intelligence is not only your pain, it is the ways you learned to protect that pain. Perfectionism, emotional distance, the need to always be right, the need to always understand, the need to appear stronger than you really feel. Because control creates distance, distance from other people, distance from your own feelings, distance from the vulnerable human part of you that has been waiting for years to be acknowledged. There is a reason why you often feel lonely even when people are close to you. Because you let them see your mind, but not your heart. You let them admire your intelligence, your insight, your strength, but you hide the trembling part of you beneath it all. The part that is afraid of being rejected if anyone sees how deeply you need, how deeply you feel, how deeply you hurt. So you stay hidden, not because you want to, that if people truly knew you, they would leave. The truth is, the walls you built to protect yourself are now the walls keeping you alone. And what makes this so painful is that the walls do not look like walls. They look like independence. They look like high standards. They look like intelligence. They look like saying, I do not need anyone. But deep down you do. Not because you are weak, but because you are human. There is a reason why your soul feels so tired. You have spent years trying to be untouchable, trying to become so wise, so self-sufficient, so in control that nothing could ever hurt you again, not even yourself, and begin asking something far more difficult. What part of me have I abandoned in order to survive? Because beneath your intelligence, beneath your strength, beneath everything you have built to protect yourself, there is still a part of you waiting. The part that wants to stop fighting reality, the part that is exhausted from carrying so much. It comes from learning how to meet life as it is. The moment you stop fighting reality. There is a moment in every life when you become tired of fighting what is, tired of wishing people were different, tired of wishing the past had not happened. For so long you have lived with the quiet belief that if you resist hard enough, life will eventually become what you need it to be. You resist endings. You resist uncertainty. You resist change. You resist the parts of yourself you do not understand. And because you resist them, they stay. The truth is, suffering is not only created by pain, it is created by the war you begin with pain. You do not only feel lonely. You tell yourself you should not feel lonely. You do not only feel hurt. You tell yourself it should not have happened. You do not only feel afraid. Most people do not realize that the more you fight reality, the more power it gains over you. Because what you resist does not leave. It only sinks deeper. You can spend years trying not to feel grief and still carry it everywhere. There is a reason why you are so tired. You are not only carrying your pain, you are carrying your resistance to it. You are carrying the exhausting belief that life should have been different, that people should have loved you better, that you should not have gone through what you went through. And perhaps you are right. Perhaps they should have loved you. Perhaps they should have stayed. Perhaps life should have been kinder. But reality does not change because it should have been different. And the more you keep your heart tied to what should have been, the more you lose the life that is waiting for you now. The truth is, acceptance is not surrender. It is not weakness. It is not saying that what happened was okay. It is not pretending that your pain does not matter. Acceptance is something much deeper. It is the moment you stop asking reality to become something it is not. You stop saying, this should not be happening, and begin asking, now that this is happening, who do I want to be? That is where your power begins, not in controlling life, but in choosing how you meet it. You cannot control that someone left, but you can choose whether you leave yourself because of it. You cannot control what happened to you, but you can choose whether you continue punishing yourself for surviving it. You cannot control the uncertainty of the future, but you can choose whether you spend the rest of your life at war with things you cannot change. When you stop needing every question to have an answer, when you stop needing every ending to make sense, because some things will never make sense. Some people will never explain themselves. Some wounds will never receive the apology they deserved. The truth is, closure is not something life gives you. It is something you create when you stop trying to hold on to what no longer belongs to you. When you stop trying to change people who do not want to change, most people spend their lives believing peace will come when life finally becomes exactly what they want. But peace does not come when life obeys you. Peace comes when you stop needing it to. Your thoughts, your choices, your response, your willingness to remain open, even after pain. And there are other things you will never control. The past, the future, other people, time. The more clearly you see the difference, the lighter your heart becomes. There is a reason why acceptance feels so frightening at first, because when you stop fighting reality, you can no longer hide behind the hope that one more thought, one more effort, one more explanation will change everything. You are left with the truth, and the truth is often painful, but it is also the beginning of freedom. Because once you stop fighting what is, you can finally begin to see what is real. Not every thought in your mind is telling you the truth. You do not need to believe every thought you think. If your mind said something, you believed it. If it repeated a fear often enough, you assumed the fear must be true. If it told you that you were too much, too difficult, too broken, too different, you carried those words as if they were part of your identity. But the truth is, your mind does not only speak with wisdom, it also speaks with fear, with old wounds, with memories that were never healed. There is a reason why some thoughts feel so convincing, because they do not arrive as thoughts. They arrive as certainty. They say, you are going to be abandoned. They are pulling away. You always ruin everything. No one will ever truly understand you. You treat every fearful thought like an emergency. You follow it. You analyze it. You build your entire emotional world around it. You do not simply feel insecure. You create evidence. You remember every moment that seems to prove you are not enough. You connect the past to the present. You build a story so convincing that you forget it is only a story. You stop asking, is this true? And start assuming, this must be who I am. That is how a passing thought becomes an identity. You think, I am difficult to love. And suddenly, every rejection feels like proof. You think, I am too sensitive. And suddenly, every feeling becomes something to be ashamed of. You think, I will always be alone. And suddenly, you stop allowing yourself to hope. The truth is, your thoughts are powerful, but they are not always honest. Some thoughts are not reflections of reality. They are reflections of pain. The frightened part of you that expects rejection before it happens, the wounded part of you that still believes love must be earned. There is a reason why the same thoughts keep returning, not because they are true, but because they are familiar. Your mind repeats what it knows, even when what it knows is suffering, even when what it knows is self-doubt, even when what it knows is the old voice that says you must always be more, do more, prove more in order to deserve love. But that voice is not you. It is only the echo of everything you have survived. Your thoughts are loud. Your deeper self is quiet. Your thoughts react. Your deeper self observes. Your thoughts are filled with fear, urgency, shame, control. Your deeper self knows things your fear has forgotten. It knows that you are not broken, that your worth does not disappear when someone fails to see it, that not everyone who leaves is proof that you are unlovable, that your sensitivity is not weakness, that your loneliness is not your destiny. But you cannot hear that deeper voice while you are believing every fearful thought that passes through your mind. A calmer voice, a wiser voice. The voice that does not speak through panic. The voice that does not need to control everything. The voice that says, you do not need to believe every thought you think. You can feel fear without obeying it. You can notice the thought that says, you are not enough, and choose not to build your life around it. Because a thought is only a thought until you decide it is the truth. And for the first time in your life, you are beginning to realize that you have a choice. You can keep living inside the same old story, because maybe the reason you have felt so different, so disconnected, so alone is not because there is something wrong with you. Maybe it is because you have outgrown the life, the beliefs, and the version of yourself that no longer fits who you are becoming. And that kind of loneliness changes everything. Loneliness is sometimes a sign of awakening. There are moments in life when loneliness becomes deeper than the absence of people. You begin to feel distant from conversations that once felt normal, from places that once felt familiar. And because you do not yet know who you are becoming, this space between your old life and your new self can feel unbearable. Most people do not realize that some loneliness is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something inside you is changing. You can no longer pretend. You can no longer shrink yourself to make other people comfortable. You can no longer keep living in ways that force you to betray your own truth. The truth is, awakening often begins with discomfort. You outgrow relationships. You outgrow dreams. You outgrow the version of yourself that survived by becoming what everyone else needed. A sacred kind of loneliness. A loneliness that appears when the soul is shedding what no longer belongs to it. But because this loneliness feels so unfamiliar, you often mistake it for failure. You think, why do I feel so alone? Because you are not meant to go back. You have already seen too much, felt too much, understood too much. You cannot return to a life that required you to stay asleep. There is a reason why the things that once distracted you no longer work, because your soul is asking for something deeper, something real, something that does not require you to abandon yourself in order to belong. So you are left standing between two worlds, no longer who you were, not yet who you are becoming. And in that space, it is easy to believe that you are lost. But you are not lost. You are in transition. You are becoming. The truth is, the loneliness you feel right now may not be punishment. It may be preparation. Because before you can build a life that truly fits you, you have to let the false one fall away. Before you can be deeply seen, you have to stop hiding. But you are being asked to do something different. To trust the emptiness. To trust the silence. To trust that the things falling away are not leaving you with nothing. They are making space. There is a reason why your loneliness feels different now. It is no longer only the loneliness of being unseen. It is the loneliness of becoming someone new. And every transformation begins this way. The old identity begins to crack. The old roles stop fitting. The old ways of thinking no longer bring comfort. You begin to see that the life you built around fear, control, and survival cannot hold the person you are becoming. That realization is painful, but it is also sacred. Your loneliness is no longer an enemy. It becomes a message, a sign, an invitation to stop seeing your difference as a wound, and begin seeing it for what it has always been. A gift. The gift, hidden inside feeling. Different. For so long you have looked at your difference as if it were a flaw. You looked at your sensitivity and called it weakness. You looked at your depth and called it overthinking. You spent years trying to become more like everyone else. Less emotional, less intense, less aware. You tried to make yourself easier to understand, easier to love, easier to accept. But no matter how much you changed yourself, the emptiness remained. You were suffering because you were trying to be someone you are not. There is a reason why pretending has always exhausted you. Because your soul has never wanted an ordinary life. It has never wanted surface-level conversations, half-hearted love, or a version of yourself built around what other people expect. You were made for something deeper. You were made to notice what others overlook, to feel what others avoid. Your sensitivity is the reason you can understand pain in others so deeply. Your loneliness is the reason you search for truth instead of settling for appearances. Your overthinking is often the shadow of a mind that was born to question, to create, to understand life beyond what is visible. You feel different because you are carrying gifts that were never meant to fit inside a small life. You were never meant to numb yourself. You were never meant to become colder just to survive in a world that fears feeling. You were never meant to silence the part of you that knows there is more. Not because there is no place for you, places where you have to hide your depth. Hide your sensitivity. Hide your truth. And every time you do that, something inside you goes quiet. Something inside you disappears. But the part of you that feels different has never disappeared completely. It has been waiting for you to stop apologizing for who you are, waiting for you to stop seeing your depth as a burden, waiting for you to understand that what you call too much, may actually be your greatest strength. Your awareness allows you to see through lies, illusions, and false connections. You do not need to become less. You need to become more honest about who you are. The truth is, your difference is not the reason you have suffered. Your rejection of your difference is. Every time you told yourself to stop feeling, every time you abandoned your own truth just to be accepted, you were turning against the very thing that makes you who you are. But something is changing now. You are beginning to see yourself differently, not as a problem to fix, not as someone who needs to become easier, smaller, quieter, but as someone who has spent a lifetime carrying gifts without knowing what they were. You begin to grieve the versions of yourself that tried so hard to fit in, the versions that stayed silent, stayed small, stayed where they were not truly seen. But grief is not the end of this story, because once you stop trying to become like everyone else, something unexpected happens. You begin to attract what was always meant for you. The right people, the right life, the right kind of love. Not because you changed who you are, but because you finally stopped hiding it. And that is when you discover something you have secretly feared your whole life may not be true. There are people in this world who can understand you. The people who will understand you exist. Not the version of you that smiles, performs, explains, and survives. The real you. The one beneath the strength. The one beneath the intelligence. The one who feels everything so deeply and has spent years pretending not to. You have lived so long with the feeling of being different that you began to believe it was your destiny to be alone. You told yourself that maybe you were simply too much. Too complicated. Too intense. Too difficult to love. So you settled for being partially seen. You accepted relationships where people knew your surface but never your soul. You accepted being admired instead of understood, needed instead of loved, tolerated instead of chosen. But the truth is, you were never too much. And many people have never learned how to go deeper. They do not know how to sit with difficult emotions. They do not know how to speak honestly. They do not know how to love without fear, masks, games, or distance. So when someone like you appears, someone real, someone deep, someone who wants more than surface-level connection, they often do not know what to do. But you are not. Most people do not realize that when you spend years around people who cannot understand you, you begin to lose faith that anyone ever will. You stop showing your true self. You become careful, guarded. You tell yourself that you do not need anyone, when the truth is that you are simply terrified of being unseen again. It is not because you are impossible to love. It is because you have spent too much time trying to receive love from people who only know how to love the version of you that abandons itself. The version that asks for less, feels less, needs less. But the real you was never meant to live that way. The real you was never meant to spend a lifetime begging to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding themselves. People who will hear what you do not say, who will understand the silence beneath your words, who will not be threatened by your honesty, your sensitivity, your complexity. But you cannot find those people while you are still hiding. You cannot be truly seen while you are performing. You cannot receive the love meant for you while you are offering the world a version of yourself that is easier to accept, but impossible to truly know. The truth is, the people who will understand you exist, but they will only recognize you when you stop pretending to be someone else. That is the painful paradox, and the more invisible you become, the more convinced you are that no one could ever understand you. But what if the reason you have not found your people is not because they do not exist? What if it is because the version of you they are meant to meet has been hidden for years? You are no longer willing to settle for being almost loved. You are beginning to understand that loneliness is painful, but self-abandonment is even more painful. And for the first time, you are ready to choose something different. Not because you are no longer afraid. That is where everything begins to change. Because the moment you stop asking, how can I make them love me? You begin asking a far more powerful question. Stop becoming what the world wants. You have spent so much of your life becoming what other people needed that you no longer know who you are without their expectations. More lovable. More understandable. You became quieter when your truth felt too intense. You became stronger when you were falling apart. You became easier when your needs felt inconvenient. And because you did this for so long, you began to believe that this was who you were. But it was never who you were. It was who you became in order to survive. The truth is, there is a difference between being loved and being accepted for the role you play. The version that was always available, always understanding, always giving, the version that wanted more, the version that wanted to stop pretending, so you stayed hidden. Because somewhere inside you there was still a part that believed, if people see the real me, they will leave. If I stop being who they want, I will end up alone. And maybe that fear once protected you. Maybe there was a time when being yourself really did lead to rejection. Maybe you learned very early that honesty was dangerous, that sensitivity made people uncomfortable, that having needs made you difficult to love. So you adapted. You became who the world rewarded. But now, something inside you is beginning to break. Not because you are falling apart. You are tired of performing, tired of pretending, tired of shrinking yourself to fit inside spaces that were never made for you. There is a reason why your life feels so heavy when you are living for other people's approval, because every time you betray yourself to belong, your soul feels it. Every time you say yes when you mean no, a part of you disappears, and after years of doing this, you begin to feel empty without understanding why. The truth is, you are not empty. You are buried beneath expectations, beneath fear, beneath all the versions of yourself you created so that other people would not leave. But you cannot build a meaningful life from a false self. You cannot create real love while hiding the truth. You cannot feel at peace while constantly becoming someone else. Most people spend their whole lives chasing acceptance, because then you are left with something that looks like belonging, but feels like loneliness. People may stay. They may admire you, need you, choose you. There is a reason why no amount of approval has ever truly healed you. It wants to be loved for who you really are. And that means there comes a moment when you must stop asking yourself, what do I need to become in order to be loved? And start asking. The answer may be uncomfortable. You may have to disappoint people. You may have to outgrow relationships. You may have to let go of the need to be liked by everyone. Because the truth is, the people who require you to betray yourself in order to keep them were never truly loving you. They were loving the role you played, and you were never meant to spend your life inside a role. You were meant to become yourself, not the version of you built around fear, not the version built around survival, the real you, the one who feels deeply, who sees deeply. There is a reason why you have felt different all your life. You were never meant to follow the path that everyone else follows. You were meant to find your own, and your life does not begin when the world finally understands you. The day your life truly begins. You cannot keep spending your life trying to become smaller, quieter, easier, less. You cannot keep abandoning the deepest parts of yourself just to earn a place in rooms that were never meant for you. If you could think less, feel less, need less, if you could stop being so different, then maybe you would finally be loved, finally be understood, finally be enough. But the truth is, you were never the problem. You were never too much. You were never too sensitive, too intense, too difficult. You were simply carrying gifts in a world that taught you to see them as flaws. You were carrying a depth that other people could not understand, a heart that felt more than it knew how to hold. And because no one ever taught you how to live with that depth, you turned against yourself. You made your sensitivity into weakness, your loneliness into shame, your intelligence into a prison. But now you know. It was proof that you had been living too far away from yourself. You know that your suffering did not come from feeling too much. It came from carrying things that were never yours. Other people's expectations, other people's choices, other people's inability to see you. It comes when you stop asking certainty to save you. The truth is, your life does not begin when someone finally chooses you. It does not begin when everyone understands you. It does not begin when you become more acceptable, more perfect, more like everyone else. Your life begins the moment you choose yourself, the moment you stop apologizing for who you are, The moment you stop calling your depth a burden. The moment you stop seeing your sensitivity as something to hide. The moment you stop asking the world for permission to exist. Because there is something extraordinary about the person you are. You notice what others miss. You feel what others avoid. You search for truth instead of settling for illusions. You were never meant for a life built on pretending. You were never meant for connections that require you to disappear. You were never meant to spend your whole life becoming what the world wants. You were meant to become who you are. And maybe that is why you have always felt different. They are here to live more honestly, more deeply, more awake. They are here to remind others that there is another way to live. A way that does not begin with self-rejection. A way that does not demand that you betray yourself in order to belong. A way that begins with the quiet, courageous decision to stop running from who you are. The truth is, there will still be difficult days. There will still be moments when you doubt yourself. But now, you know something that voice does not. You know that you are not broken. You know that your difference is not a mistake. And maybe for the first time you are ready to stop surviving. Ready to stop carrying the world. Ready to stop waiting for someone else to tell you who you are. It is the day you finally come home to yourself.